If you want to know how to start work on making your own cookbook, this video might be invaluable to you. We delve into the lessons and mistakes we made when putting together our Cabin Fever Cookbook and share a few of the things that made it extra special worthwhile. If you could pick anywhere in the world to make a cookbook, why on earth would you choose the remote wilderness of the Arctic? Well, that's exactly what we did, and with good reason. Today we're going to reflect on our journey to make the Cabin Fever Cookbook and share a few things we've learnt that could help you to make your own. But first I need to introduce Shelley Huaravo, aka Iron Chef Shelley. She's my wife and she's the best thing that's ever happened in my life. We worked on this cookbook together and I've asked Shelley to help me out for this video as well by sharing some of her tips from the project.
Pick a theme that you really care about and are really passionate about. This is going to be a long, grueling process, so you want to make sure that you convey your passion and have something to keep you going throughout the process. A cookbook is not just a collection of recipes, it's sharing who you are and what you love to do.
Our cookbook is a little different to the vast majority out there, and indeed quite a bit different to much of our own commercial work. We didn't shoot any of it in a studio or with artificial lighting. Instead, we chose to capture everything in remote cabins across Norway, Sweden and Iceland. It was a little unconventional and a lot challenging, but it was also simply the most beautiful thing we've ever made together. The concept for our book was to give the recipes a sense of place. We love each and every one of these locations, and for us the recipes are an expression of the places. So it was essential to ensure that we didn't just capture the food. You can shoot food pretty much anywhere. Most cookbooks are actually photographed in large batches, doing as many in a week as you can humanly achieve. So the location of the shoots end up being secondary, even when the publisher is trying hard to make the location a feature of the book. For us, we had to do this the other way around. The place had to come first. Everything flows from the destination itself. The very existence of the project was a reflection of our experience in these places. A decade of travelling in the Arctic and meeting people and learning to cook local dishes. Shelley's ability to cater for an entire group night after night as we travel from cabin to cabin is the foundation of this book. The recipes are an expression of our experience in these marvellous locations.
Make styling a priority and not an afterthought. If possible, you want one person focused on the camera and the other person focused on food styling. Don't try and do both. Go hard on the styling and be prepared to make a mess. The key to styling your shots is letting the messy side of the food enter the scene. Kitchens are messy, tables are messy, life is messy. Avoid the pristine and embrace the chaos a little. Perfection is the enemy of gorgeous.
There's a challenge here to decide how much of the feel to each chapter comes from the cabin and its owners, and how much comes from Shelley. Styling wise, we wanted to keep it very local. Sometimes we'd head to the nearest Red Cross to look for secondhand props, but mostly we're working with what's in the cabin itself. Genuine is always the best policy. It keeps you grounded and often leads to unexpected treasures. Shelley is the talent behind this project from start to finish. Her recipes, her vision, her styling. Any monkey can grab the camera and take shots once all the hard work is done. And that's often me, I am the monkey. Because we were not just shooting the dishes, but shooting the locations as well, we had to think about the style of the book as a whole. We didn't just want a typical Scandi feel to the project. It had to be an Arctic feel. It had to be where Scandinavia meets the auroras. That's why we came here in the first place, to chase auroras, so they are part of the story too. Now the challenge becomes blending locations, landscapes, northern lights and four-course menus into a single style. What you have to remember when it comes to styling a scene or setting a style for a book is that there's more than one correct result. There are many ways to get it right. It's easy to overthink this stuff and try to get it perfect, but actually there is no perfect. There are lots of ways it can come out great, but only if you let go of perfect.
Test the recipes before you shoot the recipes. Don't waste your time shooting anything that is not absolutely solid. Cookbooks are not merely a collection of pretty pictures, they need to be functional as well. I have very few cookbooks in my collection that I use routinely, and this is because I know those recipes and they will absolutely work. I've been burned by books with pretty pictures and half-baked recipes, and I don't go back to those authors.
One chapter of this cookbook was extra special, Mona's Cafe in Sept-de-Mone. This was originally a vintage store. She started her cafe in one half of the building, and for years the vintage store and the cafe were side by side. When the owner of the vintage store decided to close down their business, Mona just bought everything off them. Her cafe is just amazing and full of gorgeous props that they actually still use every day. Sometimes the recipes themselves end up a little bit more shelly than a local. That does happen. Mona, for example, didn't want to reveal her secrets for some of the dishes. So Shelley stepped in and developed her own recipes to fill those gaps. The shoot plan here was simple: create a beautiful feast, get some shots of the dishes before they hit the table, get shots of our guests enjoying the dishes, get shots of the cabins and the landscapes they are in. Each chapter of the book was a single menu plan, but for a group of up to 12 people. That makes 4 recipes for each chapter, all taking place in the same cabin. One big feast, one big shoot to nail all the food shots. Everything has to be genuine. We're not shooting plastic food or making things shiny with fake chemicals. Everything has to be genuine, real people, real smiles, real deliciousness. So much of social media these days is about creating a world that doesn't exist. But the real world itself, it is amazing. The real world is beautiful. We don't need to fake it. So that was the cookbook we wanted to make.
Pick a generous location. You need the space to execute on a shoot. Space to prepare, space to make a mess, space to scale up your photography. There's more to food photography than what's happening on the plate. Bring in the table, the room, the street, the village, the farms, the trails, the forests, and the ocean.
In each cabin, we're spending between 4 to 7 days, so we have time to get familiar with the location itself. Shelley works on the recipe development in the first few days, while I work on the cabin photography. Get the drone into action every so often, not too much. You don't want to overplay the drone style. Drone perspectives are invaluable for many locations though, to get a better sense of where we are. The real drama happens inside the cabin itself. On the day of the feast, there's a lot of pressure to firstly deliver a great experience for our guests, and second, to get great photos. In truth, we overshoot everything we do anyway. We could fill a dozen books with what we shot for this project. But overshooting for the locations means you have better choices when it comes to the final layout. Remember, at the time we're shooting photos, we can't be sure exactly what the layout will end up looking like. So we need options. One thing I wish I had done more of is video. Back then, I didn't really shoot a lot of video. It was only an afterthought. These days, I'm far more aware of the potential to capture some footage, and I have better skills at it too. Having usable footage to build a promotional campaign for a book is really important, and it's worth investing some effort into that. Behind the scenes, the hardest part of this project though was simply setting up a schedule to shoot one cabin after the next. We did a few trips to complete the cookbook, but there was one winter we were on the road for nearly 3 months. Reaching out to people with our proposal was hard enough, but then trying to line up each of the locations into a reasonable schedule, that really took some effort. We relied on the kindness of a handful of friends and made a few new ones along the way.
Plan for diversity while delivering consistency. This is the great paradox of curation. Diversity plus consistency. Don't shoot everything in the same kitchen or the same farmhouse. You want to mix it up a little for locations, while still bringing in a consistency of styles for the final curated set of images.
hardest part of assembling a cookbook is the process of throwing away so many of your favourite images. Curating the final layout is complex and heartbreaking. So much work goes into the production and travel and planning and capturing and processing, and then most of those photos will never get used. Only a fraction of what we shoot will end up in the book. I've run about a dozen workshops now that teach the process of curation. I have to say it's one of the most challenging tasks for any photographer. We find it really hard to let go of an image we love. Being ruthless and detached when curating the final set is the difference between a professional result and complete chaos. One mistake lots of people make is to include too many similar shots. They're essentially repeating the same idea or information. Unless an image brings something new to the chapter, it has to go. And sometimes the best image for a layout may not be the best image you shot on the day. The layout constraints themselves may dictate a different selection of shots. This is why shooting for diversity is so critical. You never know exactly which frames will prove most useful. And it's not just the cookbook layout, but the social media around the book launch and the website and any other promotional artwork. When we started this project, the original design concept was a very large format book with an almost square aspect ratio. So we mocked up a few chapters with that layout in mind. As we got deeper into the publication process, it was clear our original concept was not going to fly, and a more modest sized book was what we had to aim for. We had to push aside a lot of great material that would work beautifully in the square layout, start focusing on portrait alternatives instead. Lucky for us, we shot all the options. We had what we needed because we make a habit of shooting for diversity.
Make sure you have good light. It won't matter how good the food looks if your light is terrible. Good light usually means serving at lunchtime with proper daylight, picking a location where the natural light is working in your favour.
There's a good reason that nearly everything we do for commercial clients is shot with studio lighting. We get consistency and results from our studio gear. Natural light is a very different challenge. What we love about natural light is how the character of a place comes through. What isn't so great is the way that character changes over the course of a day. It can be perfect one second and terrible the next. We wanted to reflect a range of seasons in the book, so naturally the summer forests of Sweden are going to feel totally different when sat side by side with winter snow in Norway. But within each chapter, we wanted to ensure there was a consistent feel to the imagery. We didn't want to be immersed in snowy scenes on one page and then turn over to reveal summer on the next page. The goal with light is to make sure we have good light, but also to make sure the style of the light and processing is balanced across the entire chapter. They have to be consistent in feel and style. The images we select to sit within a chapter have to work together, and that starts with the light. Good light for the food shots may be very different to good light for the location shots, and yet the final images have to work together. They have to sit side by side on the same page. That's why there's often some work to be done with processing the raw files. You can often bring balance to disparate images by how you process those files. It all begins with light, but it all finishes with processing the raw image. The big strength with deciding to work with natural light is that it allows you the best opportunity to reflect the character of a place. When you bring in your own lights, everything is changed. It becomes a studio now. Instead, we wanted to get to know a place. So we stayed there for many days, even up to a week. We saw the light move through the space as the days unfold. We get to know when the light brings out the best character. It's not often we have a chance to get so familiar with a location for a shoot. This was a luxury and it was a joy. And if you ever get the chance to work in this way, I highly recommend it.
Do it for love, because there is no money in it. Seriously, do not do this for the money. Money will ruin it for you. You can either make a cheap book that you don't love or a really good book that ends up being less profitable. Do the thing you love and it will always be worthwhile.
So much work goes into a project like this, and yet the lifespan of a cookbook in a commercial sense is painfully short. It is all over in a flash. Long after the sales figures have stopped being tallied, what you're left with are some great memories and a handful of photos you really love, and a chance to reflect on that wonderful journey. One of the joys of this project for us was simply having a bunch of lovely images to give back to each of our hosts. We made sure they got a folder to download with all the useful photos. We still see these images popping up on our social media almost every day. It's marvellous. We'll open up Instagram and see friends posting a photo from Norway that we took back in 2018. That makes us happy. We've been super lucky to return to many of the chapter locations and spend more time with each of the families featured in the book. It feels like coming home. It feels like it all happened only yesterday. Tromsø and the far north of Norway really does feel like our second home these days. I don't think that feeling will ever go away. These places are a part of us now. Our cookbook is getting a little bit old perhaps because cookbooks do age very fast. Years have gone by, but for us it's still fresh and still special. In the same way that we love the chance to give a little something back to our host families, this book still manages to give something back to us too. Every time I open up Shelley's website and I see that book cover, it reminds me of the extraordinary journey and sharing it with my favourite person in the world.
This cookbook was not really something I ever dreamed I'd be able to do in my lifetime. I have a bit of imposter syndrome sometimes, so going in and cooking recipes for locals was really hard for me. I'm going to cry. I'm really proud of it. We had a lot of great memories, so many good photos. I know a bunch of my friends have made recipes from it, and I've got a friend who makes the salmon rillets every year for Christmas, and she loves it. We had so many good memories and made so many good friends on this shoot that I'm still emotional thinking about it. It's so stupid.
If you'd like to know more about Shelley Huardevo, you can check her out at the website ironchefshelley.com, and you can learn more about me at ewanbell.com. You can also have a look around my YouTube channel here, and you will find lots of videos about photography and a little bit about travel in the Arctic. Have a great day.